In a world of 350 billion movie podcasts, two chumps have decided that now is the time for cult movies to engage in combat. Disagreements will be had, blood may be spilled, and voiceover artists most definitely will not be paid. This is Cult Film Face-Off.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Cult Film Face-Off. My name is Chet Roivas. With me as usual is Nick Leonard.
Hello.
This episode we're going to be looking at two science fiction films from the early 80s, both almost certainly inspired by the success of Star Wars. First up is Battle Beyond the Stars from 1980, and then we're going to look at Spacehunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone from 1983. But yeah, Battle Beyond the Stars we'll start with. After his planet is attacked by an evil tyrant, a sprightly young farm boy heads into space to recruit a band of mercenaries in order to defend his peaceful homeworld. Battle Beyond the Stars.
Ruthless invaders, a defenseless planet. Battle beyond the stars. A lone youth escapes on a last-ditch mission that begins at the edge of the universe. A battle beyond time, beyond space.
Nice kick fire!
That ends in a desperate gamble.
They'll be able to board us.
It won't make any difference. Get that hatch open! No!
Battle beyond the stars.
Okay, had you seen this film before?
I'd never seen this film before. I'd never heard of it.
Had you not, really?
No.
The only reason I'd heard of it is because a friend one night we were drunk and we were looking at old films we used to like when we were kids that, you know, back in the day when we used to get sort of very, very cheap films palmed off to us by our parents when Star Wars was rented out already. And he was a big fan of it. He hadn't seen it since he was a kid. But, yeah, I was aware of it. What did you think?
Well, I mean, the title's come up. It's directed by Roger Corman, written by John Sayles. John Sayles has done some great stuff.
Yeah.
The Howling, Piranha, Alligator. I was like, right, okay, I'm ready for this. Where to start on this film? So, the main character is played by Richard Thomas.
Yeah.
John Boy from the Waltons.
John Boy, yeah.
Whenever I've seen him in a film, he plays the character of John Boy from the Waltons.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
That's all he's got. He has no range. He stunk up the screen when he was in Stephen King's It. He is blandness personified. He's sporting probably the most punchable face in the galaxy. so from the off, I was like, the central character, he's already grinding my gears. And it kind of went sort of downhill from there on. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it is a funny one. The first thing I noticed was that the first shot is a very, very overlong shot of a ship passing by. And I thought, wow, this must be the moment that was spoofed in Spaceballs. You know, when Spaceballs starts. I mean, I thought that it must be. And that happens throughout the film, because I hadn't actually seen that before. It didn't seem like a direct lift when I saw it in Spaceballs as a kid, because there aren't any shots like that in Star Wars. First off, the design of it, it's obviously made incredibly cheaply, and there's just tubes everywhere. Wherever anyone walks, there's just tubes, and the interior is like just needless tubes. It's really daft. And the ship's AI is fascinating because the default setting is sarcasm and insults. It's like a domineering mother. You just unplug it. He's getting abuse. He never gets any help from this AI that's supposed to be, you know, a female version of Hal. Just completely berating him. It's quite funny, but I just thought that would just drive me mental. I'd turn it off.
Shad, what I found stupefying is that his pitch, when he's going off to get together a band of mercenaries to defend this planet, right? His pitch is so whack to the mercenaries. He's got no money. He's got no bargaining chips. He just turns up and basically whines until they come on board and help him as being part of the cause.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
Planet of the Mime Artists. Talk to me about that.
You're talking about the guys dressed in white.
It's good to see that mimes can get work in the 80s.
I mean, just throughout, the alien species are incredibly weak. Those guys are just painted white, and they've got a third eye just sellotaped to their forehead. And then there's this other species that have upturned noses and a scar on their head. You're like, they're not even trying.
Yeah, there was really unimaginative aliens and costumes and creature design in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's over-designed and camp in ways that Star Wars even isn't today. So it feels like it was made 20 years before Star Wars rather than like a few years after it. It reminded me of Lost in Space, that old TV show.
I kept thinking of lo-fi sci-fi television series. It is completely derivative of Star Wars. I mean, it just seems to be a lot of confusing scenes which only serve to include a bit of a shit gag or introduce another species of character.
Yeah.
With actually not it being a conducive storyline at all.
Yeah. John Sayles' involvement was quite surprising because he has worked with Roger Corman before. He did, he did Piranha, and he did things like Alligator and The Howling, but he seemed to love those genres and he seemed to enjoy playing with them. But here he seems to kind of be taking the piss. He doesn't really seem to like or care about sci-fi, and the lack of action really is a killer. I mean, it's so low budget that there's only action scenes really at the end, and they're a long time coming. And at one point, one character uses the phrase "bored to death," and I was getting to that point. Even during the action scenes. I mean, actually,
action scenes, you lose action the lightest of terms because the action is pitiful in this film. There is no tension, there's no sense of danger, and also the same sound effect was used. It seemed to be used for every gun that was being fired on board a spaceship, from a spaceship.
Yeah, and they also kept reusing footage a lot as well. There's a big, well, I say big, there's a vaguely dramatic dogfight sort of half an hour from the end that's so badly assembled that, again, it kind of felt like a spoof more than anything else. You have a shot...
Oh, that was it. Sorry, go on.
It just keeps cross-cutting between the same 4 or 5 shots. So you have a close-up of Robert Vaughn's face, some lasers firing, Robert Vaughn holding some ridiculous joystick thing that looks like a tyre cover. I mean, it's the most ridiculous piloting device for a plane I've ever seen. And then there's a ship flying, and then it's Robert Vaughn, and it's just... People are supposed to get excited by this. It's so shit.
Yeah, it was totally shit. You've got some interesting cameos in there. They are cameos. George Pepper and Robert Vaughn. They came in for their 2 days and recorded their bits, obviously, and went.
Yeah.
George Peppard has a belt that dispatches whiskey and sodas with ice cubes. When I'm thinking that's the kind of one of the highlights of the film.
That's your. I mean, sci-fi fans look for future tech. What do you imagine in this future? George Peppard making a drink out of his belt.
Peppard.
But that's as an imagination of a future. It's really lame. That's about as exciting. There's no gadgets or anything. No. It's George Peppard making a drink out from his belt. Robert Vaughn and George Peppard apparently were paid the lion's share of the budget. Right. And Robert Vaughn, I have to say, is worth every penny. He's only in about 3 scenes, but he gets one scene where he's basically this bored, egomaniacal old billionaire he's actually quite an interesting character. And when he's introduced, that scene, the writing is at its strongest, and he's the best thing in it. And I thought that was really good, but that was about as good as it gets.
That's fair comment. That scene with him when it's his introduction, when he's being recruited by Chad, that's like a dark, ominous, nihilistic, badass mercenary. You're like, okay, that's an engaging 5 minutes.
Yeah.
There's not really any other engaging 5 minutes in this film.
No, I agree with that.
James Cameron was the art director of this film and built some of the spaceships.
And he got a lot of praise, apparently. I mean, even critics at the time were saying the special effects are really decent. That's so strange because it's such a quantum leap backwards from Star Wars. Yeah. But you find that sometimes. You hear about films that were praised at the time for special effects and they've just aged so badly.
You put this in context. This came out the same year as The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I know. It's mad.
I mean, what?
Yeah, it's mental. And there was the dogfight, and the other big action scene is an action scene on the ground, and it's just murky shots of people walking or standing still with laser bolts zooming all over the place. It's the most unthrilling gun battle I've ever seen.
The horny mercenary chick with the whopping big cans was a bit of camp fun.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about her is that...
I love her positioning.
Yeah, but there was one shot where you could... the camera seemed to just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go down and look at her breast.
Yeah.
And then there was another shot where she goes and stands in front of the camera with her butt's there, and they just leave it there. Like, we cut away from a woman's backside.
The two things that was reminding me of, it reminded me a bit of Lost in Space, a little bit of Flesh Gordon.
Right, yeah, that's right, yeah.
John Saxton as the supervillain is terrible.
Yeah, he's not.
I'm a big fan of John Saxton. He's great on Nightmare on Elm Street, Enter the Dragon, in Black Christmas. But he's got no menace, no charm. He just doesn't pull it off.
No, he doesn't. I mean, John Saxon is somebody who is often terrible. It has to be said. But this is one of those films that I think is only really of interest if you're completely and utterly obsessed with sci-fi movies. You know, because sci-fi fans want to see everything and just see how it was influenced by other things, how it went on to influence other things. But this doesn't really have anything. I mean, John Sayles was trying to basically do a remake of The Magnificent Seven. I don't think
it's not really comparable, is it?
No, not in the slightest. I mean, it's a bad film. It's just product. It's product to try and capitalise on Star Wars, and the lack of invention and the lack of excitement is it's a killer. I mean, I just think it's pretty goddamn terrible.
It's a piece of shit. And the abrupt ending as well. Yeah. I mean, what did they just run out of cash? Did the checkbook get closed? They were like, we just got it. I mean, it ended abruptly as well. There was really very little redeeming features in this movie.
Yeah, it's a nothing film. I mean, was Roger Corman actually billed as the director in the credits?
I think so. Because
it's on IMDb. He's the director's listed as Jimmy T. Murakami, I think it is, and with John Sayles. Roger Corman uncredited.
Right.
Jimmy T. Murakami, he directed The Snowman, the
animated,
the British animation that everyone watches at Christmas. He also directed that other animation, the spooky, really, really downbeat thing, When the Wind Blows, about that couple who are sort of hiding from nuclear. Yeah. So he strange person to have directed this, but then again, it looks like it was either taken away from him or he wasn't.
Well, I was going to. Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out how much work he had on it compared with Corman, who was the driving force.
Yeah, I mean, he's always the driving force, so that's the thing. I will say two things about this. Two moments made me laugh very hard.
Okay. I think I've got. Well, okay. I've got a good guess what one of them could be.
Okay, one of them. There is another alien species who's just a generic alien who looks like a lizard, and he's fleetingly in it. And at one point, he basically commits Harry Carey, I think, and his battle cry as he goes to die is "Lazarus!" Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
That was funny. Yeah. And John Saxon's final line, as he realises he's about to die, his ship's just being destroyed around him, and the zinger when the ship's about to blow up. I want to live forever. That is such a lame.
It's weak.
Yeah,
it's weak.
With none of the.
No, the bit that really made me laugh is when the two they're like the mini Kojak twins.
Oh right, yeah. Okay,
the mini Kojak twins is basically when they're under heavy fire, they come out in front of the vehicle, and then they do this kind of. They kind of just do this really weird movement and then lie down and die.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's so shit. That really made me giggle. It really made me giggle.
Yeah. I mean, this is a film to be skipped, even if you're a hardcore sci-fi nut, because there's just nothing in it of any worth. It's not. There's. George Papard's drink spell is about
that is it, and maybe his quip about hot dogs. That was slightly funny.
Yeah, okay.
His hot dogs. The joke is. Hot dogs are full of shit, and that's what humans call me.
Yeah, right.
Jesus,
yeah.
Kill me.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, it's aged terribly, but I have no doubt that it was shit in the first place.
Swerve it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, next up is Spacehunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone from 1983. After 3 women are captured by an evil dictator on a disease-ridden planet, a space hunter named Wolf accidentally enlists the help of an orphaned Earthling and a former army buddy, and the trio set off in an attempt to rescue them.
In 2 weeks, Columbia Pictures will present 3D as you've never seen it before. The first quality 3D film backed by a major studio. The first to use a new state-of-the-art 3D process. This is Spacehunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. It's the story of 3 unlikely heroes. Their destination, the Forbidden Zone. Their mission, save 3 stranded women.
I like her.
Their chances, 1 in a million.
I'll take that bet.
Columbia Pictures presents Outer Space as you've never seen it before. The ultimate 3D experience.
Can't anything be simple anymore?
Spacehunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. In 3D, the first movie that puts you in outer space. Rated PG. Coming soon to a theater near you.
Okay, Spacehunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. You seen this?
Nope.
No, me neither. What did you make of it?
So, Spacehunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. Flabby title. Bit of a flabby film. I mean, I enjoyed this. I'll say this from the off. I enjoyed this so much more than Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, me too.
The central character, McNabb, he is a bargain basement Han Solo.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a lag. He's brought on board. I mean, that from his kind of opening kind of scene, he has this female android in a skimpy nightdress, and he likes to perv. He basically. Has made her wear this nightdress so he can have a perv every time that she bends down to work the navigation controls.
Yeah, right.
Brilliant. One of the early scenes, there's a in battle scenes. This is more influenced, I would say, in terms of look and what's happening, post-apocalyptic kind of Mad Max vibes, as opposed to straight up sci-fi and Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's this wicked steampunk pirate galleon that rocks in, and then these wing guys, they sweep down. I was like, yeah, this is a well solidly placed action set piece. So I was like, okay, I'm ready for this. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, no, the thing that I was going to point out is exactly the same thing. It's way more influenced by Mad Max and the Road Warrior more specifically. Everything's kind of handmade out of like metal and cloth, and the vehicles are these smoke billowing old rusty scrapyard contraptions. And people are called things like zoners and earthers and scavs and bleeders. This is a Mad Max. Everyone at the time was like, this is a Star Wars rip-off. I'm just like, it's pure Mad Max. And also the villain is this grotesque who's looking for nubile young women, which is very much Fury Road. And also the climax basically takes place in Thunderdome. In terms of there are actually stunts in this, and they're performed in camera rather than the dog shit that passed for action in Battle Beyond the Stars. There is actually really decent stunt work in this, and it was shot in 3D originally. It was
you can see there's quite a few sequences. Well, not as many as I expected from those films that have been made for 3D. There's normally all these clunky parts where they're like the fingers being pointed out towards the audience. There's one with a gun. Yeah. It's just going slightly. You're like, oh, I get this. Yeah, it's obviously been shot in 3D.
Yeah. At the time, the producers of the film came out and said, this isn't one of those films where everything's jutting. We're not trying to make people feel like that. And then there was the Siskel and Ebert review I looked at. Gene Siskel was like, what's the point of putting it in 3D then? Especially the basic 3D. But then you must just think, why am I looking at it like that? But there are a couple of moments that are supposed to make you jump, where something either falls or tumbles into shot. They have to show it so slowly. There's a bit where a chicken just a bit, and it happens so slowly that's comical. It's there's no. It would have been so much better if it wasn't actually shot, knowing that they were going to put it in 3D. It's kind of like a ghost train. The plot is basically these characters going places and then very quickly having to leave those places, then going to another place, and they go. So it's very, very simple. But like I did really enjoy it. I didn't, but it's the appeal I can understand completely.
Yeah, Molly Ringwald. Reassuringly annoying as always. She's always annoying. The constant bickering got boring really quick. The creatures were so much more creative than Battle Beyond the Stars. I especially like the white, pasty, flabby poo people who were being shot out of tubes when they were being introduced.
Right,
I was really cracking up. There's just much more. The aqua women, the really kind of sultry, sexy aqua women. They look really good. All the paint and the lycra and the costumes. The Komodo-y kind of dragon that came out of the water, not so good.
Yeah, right.
But at least lots of effort was being made, lots of different colours being put on the screen. Michael Ironside absolutely knocks it out of the park compared to John Saxon as the baddie in Battle Beyond the Stars.
No doubt.
He looks menacing. He looks like a cross between Nosferatu and Richard O'Brien after a 20-year solid meth binge. Much more effort's been put back. He's got a metal plate. He's got massive mechanical arms, metal teeth. John Saxon, slight port wine stain, facial birthmark.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no contest in that department. I didn't mind Molly Ringwald, but she was clearly supposed to be very, very irritating. That was the whole point of her character.
Yeah, I get it. She's meant to be irritating, but
But you've got to admire the fact that she pulled it off.
What? But there was far too much time with them bickering. It wasn't any dialogue which was serving the plot or giving her background story or asking more about McNabb's background story. It was literally her just being a really annoying, almost being annoying like a 10, 11-year-old girl. But then obviously it's also a bit disconcerting that he's obviously got sexual ideas about.
No, I don't think. I think it's in the beginning she thinks that she has to. She's trying to use that to her advantage. I don't think at any point he's completely ice cold to her. I don't think he's ever thinking that they're going to be a couple.
What?
Did you?
Do you know what? The end when they're sleeping next to each other at the end, and he's literally extremely close to her.
At the end?
Yeah, at the end of the film, when they're lying down next to each other, they're sleeping like...
Oh, no, I mean, he gives her that little kiss at the end, but I just thought,
No, they're lying down.
You think that's midway through when they sleep together? Because they wake up and...
Well, I definitely think that it was slightly disconcerting that he kind of... At first, he's very cold and dismissive towards her, but then I'm getting the kind of... Well, it's kind of alluding to the fact that something could happen there.
I felt like she initially felt that she was going to use that as a weapon, and then as it went on, she developed a crush on him, but he was never in any way interested. I never thought that... He was completely cold to that, I thought. But with regard to their dialogue, not really...
But the suggestion is that they could be...
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think she developed a crush on him, but he never... I never felt that was awkward or weird. But with regards to their dialogue not pushing the plot forward, I felt that this was so much better at hiding the lack of action than Battle Beyond the Stars was. That couldn't hide the fact that it had no budget. This had a greater budget than that, obviously, but I really liked Ernie Hudson.
Yeah,
Ernie Hudson. His character was really good, and some of their sort of dialogue was really good. And their relationship had a little bit of the relationship that John Ashton and Robert De Niro had in Midnight Run.
Yeah,
old compadres. They don't trust each other.
That relationship was good. That was cool. I could have just done with a lot less bickering from Molly Ringwald. And I get she's annoying, but she didn't have to have so much screen time.
I think that was just a case of padding, because they didn't. They couldn't have. They had the big action scene at the end. There was action throughout, but they had to pad out a 90-minute film at the end of the day. The Peter Strauss, the guy that played the lead. Most actors that played Han Solo or Indiana Jones types in the 80s. I mean, I remember Richard Chamberlain in King Solomon's Mines. So bland, so uninteresting. He was very likeable, very easy to root for, and a pretty sort of convincing action hero. So I'm surprised that he's only really done sort of bit parts.
I've not really seen him in much since. No. I mean, this was more fun than Battle Beyond the Stars. It was camp. It was cheeseball. But I enjoyed it. The running time kind of went pretty fluidly.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely realised I was enjoying it sort of halfway through. The first half I wasn't so certain about, but I gradually just, when it finished, I thought that was a perfectly serviceable piece of entertainment. Nothing great, but I can see the appeal of that. And anyone who has fondness for it, who saw it when they were young, totally makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I can see it. Watching that as a kid, 8 or 9 years old, I'd imagine you having very fond memories of it. It was a fun 90 minutes. But I mean, I wouldn't watch it again. I'm not going to get any more from watching it again. But I mean, light years ahead of entertainment compared to Battle Beyond the Stars. Yeah, I agree. So, which is the better film? Well, Spacehunter. Spacehunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. That was an easy one. Easy. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Please make sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter. Please get us your subscribe on YouTube. We are putting up episodes which are cut alongside video of the films we're actually talking about. And please do keep suggestions coming in. We'd love to hear of films that you'd like to see paired up. Definitely. Oh, and also special thanks to Oscar Kugblanu. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kugblanu, I think that's correct, on Twitter, who suggested that we do this episode. So thanks very much to him. Big ups, Oscar. Cheers. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Jobless.
Cult film Face Off.